Hi, my name is Natalie, and I'm a research fellow at USC. And today I'm going to be talking about some work that Jill Darling, who's also at USC, and I have been working on understanding trends in protective and social behaviors during the COVID-19 pandemic. So just a quick overview of the data we're using. We're using the Understanding America study, which I know there's been some talk about, so I'll skip the description of it, but we are using findings based on data collected between April and September of this year. And we've also brought in a few additional data sources, including the 2020 USC Dornsife presidential election poll, and also some of the state level caseload data from the New York Times. So I'm going to start by looking at a basic protective behavior, wearing face masks. So this figure shows the percentage of Americans who report wearing a face mask in the past 7 days. And as you can see, there's this kind of rapid adoption of face mask wearing in April and May, followed by a slow and steady increase through August until it levels off in the fall. I think there are a couple interesting things here. One, actually the rates of wearing face masks are really high. 9 out of 10 Americans report wearing one in the last week. And two, this kind of adoption of face masks really occurred prior to the CDC's recommendation that we should be wearing face masks, which was in July. And at that point already, we see basically 85% of Americans reporting having worn one. Another interesting thing is during this time frame, the perceived effectiveness of face masks has really remained unchanged and remains really high. So, nearly 9 out of 10 Americans report that face masks are somewhat or extremely effective at preventing coronavirus spread. And now I just want to show kind of over the same time frame how other behaviors have been changing. So we see, this summer bump in social activity occurring. So this is visiting other residences and having visitors over to your own residence, as well as to some extent a bump in going to bars and restaurants. And this has really leveled off in the fall. But essential activities like seeking medical care and going food shopping really remained unchanged during the course of the pandemic. So this is a really busy slide, but basically we want to understand kind of if there are differences across social groups in the people who are and are not wearing face masks. So I'm just going to start at the top and highlight a couple of interesting findings. So obviously we see a large gap in face mask wearing among rural and urban households. We also, moving down, see if we look at where people are located and kind of divide their incidence of coronavirus in the past week into quartiles, we don't really see any relationship between a decision to wear a face mask and kind of like the immediate disease environment, which is kind of interesting. And then moving down here, we see based on likely 2020 candidate that Trump supporters are significantly less likely to wear a mask as compared to both Biden supporters and to undecided individuals. And there are also some other differences we see here across age, education, and race. So obviously a lot of these things might be related, so we just threw them all into a simple regression. And I think what's interesting here is that this Trump finding is really robust to inclusion of even all of these other controls. And also this kind of age finding continues to play out with older Americans being more likely to report wearing masks. So now I want to return to these other activities I talked about before, the social and the essential activities. And here we're going to look at how often during these activities are people wearing face masks. And you'll see here that the kind of time frame is shorter than before. We didn't start asking this question until June. So we're missing some of the information in the beginning of the pandemic. But I think the big takeaway here is that this high rate of mask use is really driven by wearing masks during essential activities, going to the grocery store, seeking medical care, places where it's easier to regulate wearing masks and is mandated to do so. But in these social activities, especially like at individual residences, wearing masks is still really uncommon and hasn't changed much over time. So we're just going to look at, again, if there are differences across these major social groups in who is wearing masks when they're visiting other residences. And I think it's pretty similar findings here, right? We see this urban-rural divide, some relationship with the political or who you're going to vote for in 2020, and also this kind of big race finding where, a white individuals are significantly less likely to be wearing a mask in these scenarios. So I guess one thing takeaway from this is that, maybe this is really a political issue. Obviously, we talk a lot about this in the news. We actually ask individuals if they agree with the statement that wearing a mask is a political statement, and only 12.8% of Americans agreed with that. Although within the people who agree, we do see that they are much more likely to be male, much more likely to be Trump supporters, and also much more likely to be white. So I think, in sum, we do see this heterogeneity in mask wearing across social group and also by activity. And for the most part, people are wearing masks in the more heavily regulated activities. But the lack of mask wearing among everyone in basic kind of social interactions suggests that for the most part, Americans are underestimating the risk of these social interactions, and that moving forward, if we want to enhance protective behaviors, we might need to consider that it's not just a political issue and it's not just a social issue, but that as a whole, although these things are obviously playing into the decision, but on the whole, we're underestimating the risk of these kinds of social activities.